Getting to the heart of the matter. Back to Guy, Ben, and Frank with more Inside the News.
Welcome back to our election trail segment right here on Inside the News. Glad to have you with us all across the country and on YouTube, which we're all across the world, and so we are on the SoundCloud. Election trail segment, Ben Brunson is the bottom middle if you're watching us, and Frank Vernuccio on the top left. Frank, let's get right to it here. In many ways, you look at Biden, and he's almost being set up to fail. I mean, you hear Hillary Clinton saying, don't concede this thing. And there are all these little side comments like, don't do this and don't do that. And they're almost wanting him to fail, because if they kind of set that bar that low, and if he doesn't make it, well, okay, Trump was just, I don't know. What do you think about that, Frank?
Well, the joke making the rounds this week among political circles that Joe finally came out of the basement and came out of his hole and saw 4 more years of Donald Trump. If you look at the whole approach the Democrats have had, it is their assumption that everyone in America hates Donald Trump so much they didn't even need to campaign. And of course, this is another example of the insular nature of the leadership of the Democratic Party. If you go back a number of years to the second Nixon election, there was a famous socialite in New York City who said, "I don't understand how Nixon won. No one voted for him." And I think it's the same mindset within the Democratic Party. They can't understand how their animosity of Donald Trump is not shared by every single voter in the entire United States. It's why they haven't made any policy pronouncements, why they missed the entire opportunity of their convention to talk about any actual issues. The only issue the Democrats have is that Donald Trump is somebody that's dislikable, and therefore, of course, everybody's going to vote against him.
Not to get complacent on the people who are MAGA, Make America Great, Trump supporters. But Ben, you brought this out in some pre-production. There are houses in my area that had Hillary signs in their front yard. This year, they've got Trump signs in their front yard. I mean, the same people, but different signs. In other words, they've actually switched alliances. And what Frank is saying, well, nobody voted for him. I'm seeing that this silent majority is much more large than what people are giving it credit for, and that people are really switching sides, and many of the black voters are doing the same thing here, Ben.
Yeah, I think Florida, let's start with the premise that the winner of Florida will win the White House, because the math is pretty clear. I don't think you can win without winning Florida. Florida is the swing state at this point. And it was true 4 years ago, and I think it's going to be true now. 4 years ago, I saw a lot of Hillary Clinton signs in yards around Central Florida, and a number of Trump signs. It was roughly 50-50. I would say that walking around now, and my wife and I went on a long walk last weekend through a working class neighborhood, and saw lots of Trump signs, lots of U.S. flags out, lots of Blue Lives Matter flags out, thin blue line flags out. Not a single Biden sign or bumper sticker or support of any type did we see on this long walk. It was a 10-mile walk. And the sense I get is that is very much what's happening in Central Florida. Now, of course, South Florida, Dade, Broward County, Palm Beach is where a lot of the Democratic vote resides in Florida. But even when I'm down there, I don't see the Biden support. And there's another factor. The Democrats like to talk about Jill Stein having cost Hillary Clinton the state of Florida 4 years ago. And Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, got 0.6% of the Florida vote. What people ignore is that there was a guy named Gary Johnson, the Libertarian, who got 2.2% of the vote in Florida 4 years ago. And I would say most of those votes came out of Trump's pocket, if not all of those votes. And this time around, I don't see those people who were completely unsure about Donald Trump and went with Gary Johnson. I see almost all those votes going to Trump this time. So the math is lining up quite well. Hillary Clinton always had the lead in every poll taken in Florida 4 years ago, or it was the toss-up. It was a statistical toss-up. And right now, Biden is underperforming Hillary in the polling, even if he shows maybe a slight lead or a toss-up in some polls. But I can tell you right now, the sense I get in Florida is that it's going to go solidly for Trump this time.
Frank, as Ben was talking, it reminded me of that gal that was in the primaries. What was her name? Mary somebody, the Summer of Love with the beads and, love child type of thing. You know which one I'm talking about here. And, that's, it's a far cry, but she was kind of portraying, let's be nice to everybody. Let's love one another. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Frank?
Vaguely. I do, actually, yes. I just want to add on something Ben had said in terms of what the perception is. I had dinner with a former retired New York State Assemblyman, a Democrat, an active Democrat, who informed me that he's voting for Donald Trump. In some of my dealings in my own community, I met with a former staff worker for a Democratic Party congressman, who also informed me that he's voting for Donald Trump. I think what many of the Democrats see is that in order to win back their own party, they have to rid themselves of the current leadership, which is extreme hard left or completely incompetent and blind, like the Joe Bidens, like the Bernie Sanders. The party, the Democratic Party, never had a chance to have the catharsis that they actually needed. Perhaps it would have been better for the center of the Democratic Party if they actually did run Bernie Sanders. The Republican Party seems to be more or less bossed than the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders was the Donald Trump of the Democratic Party, totally opposite politically, but certainly the same as being an outsider. The bosses in the Democratic Party prevented Bernie Sanders from becoming the candidate of their party. So they never had that catharsis they really needed to get the party back on track, to openly say, this is one track we could take, this is another track we could take. And so the party is falling apart at this point. That's why one of the reasons the Joe Biden campaign is doing so poorly.
Let's go back to 2006 here, Ben. Bush. Bush 43 here, he started to wane. He started to leave the Republican Party in many respects. Obama comes on in, and the Republicans, they got whipped. And then they got taken to the cleaners as far as the House goes, too, because then they lost all of that. And now, after 2016, maybe the Democrats had to kind of re-examine just what Frank was saying.
Well, look, the re-examination in the Republican Party led to open the door to a candidate like Donald Trump, who is, as we discussed earlier, redefined the party and is reshaping politics, I think, for the long term in this country. And it's going to, like I said earlier, it's going to be critical who follows him and whether that person continues the same policies of elevating the working class over the elite interests in this country. And if they do that, the Republican Party will be set for another 100 years.
Wow. We've got more I wanted to talk about on this one. We've got a Picking Up the Pieces segment, and then we've got our last segment, Putting the Bow on the program. That was Ben Brunson. We've got Frank Vernuccio, and you're listening to us on our affiliates across the country. Thank you so much and for hanging in there with us. And AUNTV.com. We're going to take a timeout. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.